Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima has called on the people of Plateau State, irrespective of political and religious inclination, to embrace peace for the betterment of the state. The Vice President made the call at a town hall with stakeholders in Jos. Our correspondent Douglas Francis filed in this report.
The Vice President, alongside the National Security Advisor, took turns to address the leaders. They say President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda is for a peaceful coexistence in Nigeria, and that remains his key policy.
There are certain initiatives that the President has entrusted to me, which I have discussed with the Chief of Defense Staff and the NSA. Give us the platform, give us the peace. There is no religion that sanctions the killing of the innocent. The hottest place in hell will be reserved for those who shed the blood of the innocent. Whether you are a Christian or you are a Muslim, don't ever hide under the cover of any of the Abrahamic faith and kill innocent souls. Happened to us.
National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu says the federal government is taking genuine steps to resolve the dispute.
And it has happened for too long. It's not right, it's not fair, it's not just. The Plateau have suffered, probably suffered more than any part of Nigeria today. I think enough is enough. Enough is enough. In our own heart and by our own actions, with our own resolve and commitment, and say enough is enough.
The religious council.
Plateau State Governor assures the Vice President of serious engagements with stakeholders towards achieving peace in the state.
These visitors that have come here will harass them until something good comes out of their visit. Friday will be communicated with members of the Interreligious Council. We'll have a meeting on Friday. We are the leaders of Plateau. We need to talk. We need to talk. And we need to talk sincerely. And I pray that we will be able to come together, united in heart and purpose, to be able to deal with these issues.
Traditional rulers and other stakeholders speak while applauding the Vice President for visiting.
This is our first Christmas having a son of the soil leading us in Plateau State. So I will tell you that the people of Bokos didn't find this thing likely, and we are sad. But the good thing is that the federal government have been able to intervene.
The governor and his entourage visited some survivors at the Jos University Teaching Hospital and assured them of the government's assistance.
It's our earnest request that government curtails the security challenges we are facing and brings in more help to secure lives and properties.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined live in the studio by the security expert and the former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson. Also is Chima Christian, who is a public policy analyst and executive director of Africa's Morning Center for Public Policy and Good Governance. Gentlemen, good to see you both, and thanks for your time. Well, not too good a story that we end in the year with this. Very unfortunate, because we've had this conversation series, of it on the show. Bish, first, this is the first time we're talking about this since it's occurred. This didn't come to you as a surprise, does it?
No, not at all. This is one too many incidents of this nature, unfortunately. And so I am not surprised that this thing happened, because this, as you alluded, this is not the first time that this similar incident had happened, not just in the country, but in that state particularly. So it didn't come to me as a surprise. We didn't seem to have learned any lessons from the previous ones that happened. I am hoping that this one will be a watershed moment in which we're able to learn and take some lessons from it and put them into practice.
Well, Chima, you're very familiar with the terrain, with the area, with the people, and our hearts, our condolences to those who are lost. But how are they coping at the moment?
Well, it's a terrible humanitarian situation. And for instance, Mango is close to Mango local government area, received part of the attacks, is close to Bokos local government area, where this latest had the more number of people killed. In Mango alone, where I had visited less than 2 months ago, I had gone to these communities, I've seen the level of destruction. In one of the IDP camps in Mango, there's 4 IDP camps and 12 distribution centers. One of the IDP camps I visited had 4,000 households, close to 7,000 individuals in an IDP camp. And then one of the prominent politicians of this nation visited that local government and that state. And the particular IDP camp received 72 bags of rice. And 72 bags of rice were distributed to 4,000 households, and each household was getting a cup of rice. And then the day they were distributing a cup of rice, they had to bring in soldiers from helping to manage the distribution of a cup of rice. So you see that people are hungry, angry, and frustrated to the point that they are struggling and fighting each other over a cup of rice, not for one individual, but for one household. This is just to paint a picture of the humanitarian disaster that is happening on that scale. Move away from the humanitarian disaster, and my point is that what I've seen, because I've spent 8 months studying the insecurity in the Middle Belt, and what we've seen is that the insecurity in the Middle Belt is not what is reported. What I thought while going into the Middle Belt was that, oh, there is a farmer-header clash, and I didn't see one. I've been to Nasarawa, I've been to Benue, I've been to Plateau, I've not been to Southern Kaduna. I limited my thing to Northern Kaduna, where I just gathered secondary materials. But then what you find in Southern Kaduna is not going to be different from what you find in the 3 states I've talked to you about. What is happening is an act of terror, and I'll give you this. I'll refer you to Nigeria's laws, Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022. If you go to section 3, subsection C, so let's just read so that you see what I'm saying. The law says that an act of terror is an act committed by, let's see, in this act of terrorism means an act willfully performed with the intention of furthering an ideology, whether political, religious, racial, or ethnic, in which, I'll now jump to section 3C, subsection 3C, in which seriously intimidates a population. What you're reporting intimidates a population. That's number 1. Then D, which seriously destabilizes or destroys the fundamental political, constitutional, economic, or social structures of a country or international organization. What you are reporting also contravenes this act. D, let's go to F, which violates the provisions of any international treaty or resolution to which Nigeria is a party or subject to the provisions of section 12 of the Constitution. Then G, I'll read GII and IV and I'll end with that. GI, which causes or involves or it results in I, attack on a person's life in the form of grievous bodily harm or death. Now go to III, destruction of a facility including a private property which may likely endanger human life or result in major economic loss. And then V, the people who are engaged in the manufacture, possession, acquisition, transfer, supply, or use of weapons. Every other thing that is captured by this law as terrorism is what we are reporting. Why do we keep calling it farmer-header crisis?
Let me bring in Bish here, because the Vice, I want you to also comment on that, because that's your area of forte, and you've also done extensive study on this. We saw the National Security Advisor there, and people have been asking questions because the community is speaking till this moment, talking about, first yesterday on the show, someone told us, my guest said, they received letters of an impending, attack, and nothing is done. And one motorbike alone can distract you with the sound, let alone hundreds of motorbikes. So, Bish, what are we dealing with at the moment?
Well, Suleiman, it's not a matter of nomenclature, whether we call them bandits or we call them terrorists. I think the Nigerian government had, before now, classified all these people as terrorists, which is who they are. Now, we have also identified the problems. Most of the times, they say it's as a result of clashes between farmers and herders, which he has disputed that that's not what it is. And I doubt that that is what the problem is. Because if that is what the problem is, the first step to solving a problem is identifying what that problem is, right? You identify the problem is almost 50% solved. Then you now solve the problem. If we had identified the problem as farmers, herders, clashes, What does it take to solve it? The fact that since that time till now, because this is not the first time this kind of attacks has been taking place in Nigeria and particularly in that state. If we had identified it as farmer-herder clashes over resources, over land, what is holding us from finding a solution to it? Nigeria is not the only place in the world where you have livestock owners and you have farmers. But those people, both the farmers and the livestock stock owners are living side by side in peace. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We ought to have gone to all these places and find out what exactly they are doing that we are not doing. So, but the fact that these things, we say it's farmer-herder clashes and we have not been able to solve the problem tells me that it's much more deeper than that. It's not what it is. And that is what we need to focus our attention, is to find out what exactly is causing these problems. And the first step, which is what ought to have happened, is that the people responsible ought to have been apprehended. The security agencies ought to have deployed all of the assets they have, establish a perimeter, and hunt down these people and bring them in for questioning. Because once you arrest one of them, we're going to get trove of intelligence information from just that one person that we arrest. We're going to find out who that individual is, what was the motivation for the attack, how did he get funding, how did they get their weapons. If we can get answers to these questions, we will begin to put in place measures to be able to solve the problem and solve it permanently. But unfortunately, each time this type of attacks occur, what we see mostly, not that it's commendable, it's politicians, they go to visit people in the hospitals and they pay their bills and stuff like that. Not much attention is focused or effort is focused on trying to find the perpetrators of this kind of attacks. You and I know that in other jurisdictions, within 72 hours, they will make arrests. Here we are today. This thing happened 24th night. Today is 28. We have not heard about a single arrest of any one of the perpetrators of this attack. So how do we solve the problem? How do we know who the people are?
In other words, does this also mean that the president's directive, because he spoke immediately and he said, pursue, apprehend, and prosecute. And now you just reminded us that it's almost day 5 and nothing has been done.
Suleiman, we are used to this. We are not strangers in this country.
But we'll try not to get used to it, and that's why I'm happy that you're here. Quickly, politically speaking, I'll come to you quickly, Stanley, but I just wanted Bish to speak more on security quickly here. That's what they call security vote. And now some of the community members, the young people in the Middle Belt, are asking that the president go back to his promise of bringing forest rangers back, akin to what we have in Nigeria Southwest, the Amotekons. Can that help?
Well, the more bush you have on the ground, bush that are serious, right? Bush that are serious, not a matter of having more bush on the ground, but having bush on the ground that are serious. It will help. But the thing is, what is the source of our problem? Who are these people? I've listened so many times to some of the victims of this kind of attacks, and each time you ask them, they say they don't speak any of Nigerian languages. And if they don't speak any of those Nigerian languages, it means that it's foreigners that are coming to kill Nigerians. Now, how did they get into the country? How the motorbike, the hundreds of motorbikes that we are talking about, where did they get them from? So it is very, very important that at least one person from those perpetrators is apprehended, so that we can get a trove of information on how to deal with this. Let me tell you, our problem is also the way we manage our borders. Our borders, I'm quoting the Minister of Interior, we have over 1,400 illegal crossings on our borders, 4,000-kilometer borders. If we want to take security seriously, we have to secure our borders by all means necessary. Border security is different from closing the border. A lot of people get those confused. Your borders can be open and they're secured. There are a lot of high-tech equipment that we can use to secure these borders if we don't want to recruit more personnel. But we can do both. We need to take the issue of border management very seriously, because if you look at what are the weapons of choice in these attacks, the weapons of choice are usually small arms and light weapons. How are they getting them? There are only 3 ways you can lay your hands on those weapons. One, either they are coming in through our porous borders. 2, or that local manufacturers are producing them. Or 3, that there are rogue elements in our system that are hiring these weapons to criminals.
Well, I'll come back to that, you space it, because he points to our border police, the Nigerian customs, the Nigerian immigration. Chima, you know, we're talking about solutions here. And how best, really, can Nigeria put a stop to this? Because there seem to be aliens coming in to attack our people. But listening to what you have said so far across the northern belt, it tells a story that they understand that these are not people who are recognized to be indigens or people who live amongst them. So I don't know if you had any kind of conversation with some of those as to the operations and how best we spring to action when they call for help, because they've also, later on I want Bish to also talk on that, because the response time, they say, is almost totally absent.
That's it. So I'll come back to the response time. Let me also try to be establishing the base of the discussion. You usually ask yourself, what happens to these communities after they've been attacked? Usually a particular community is attacked like 3 or 4 times over a 1-year period, and the people in that community feel so unsafe, they move to the neighboring community or to an IDP camp. And you would expect that those communities will remain empty. No, they won't. People come in there and settle there. As I'm speaking with you, go to Moon Council Ward in Kwande local government area of Benue State. As I'm speaking to you, you have almost 38 communities in Mango local government alone that have been repossessed by people. And these are places where you have some places. You know that Plateau, for instance, used to be a mining site when Nigeria was big on iron mining and all of those ore minings. These people are taking over those strategic places, and they are taking over bodies of water, and they settle there. And so it is not as if they attack and people can move back to their communities. When people try to move back to their communities, the attacks resume and they run away. So people are living in their houses now. And then if you go back to the
so it's a case of attack, sack,
occupy and replace. And then if you move a bit further to see the modality and in the upcoming census, NPC is not going to be accounting those demolished houses. NPC is not going to be counting them. NPC is going to be instead counting new settlements close to those demolished houses. So there is a serious problem you have on your hands. It's beyond what is being painted by the media. Let's still stay on the cause of the problem. And you find a community who they will tell you they are coming, and they come, droves, in some cases 250 people. And then the community has like 20 or 30 vigilante services against who have pump action rifles, who you know that the effective range of a good pump action, depending on the bullets you're using, is 30 meters. And these guys have 400-meter weapon that they can fire at you from 400 meters away, and they aim you and they get you. Sometimes they have surface-to-air missiles. Sometimes they have weapons that can fire at operative range of 800 meters. Sometimes they come with 50-meter caliber weapons. And the military-grade assault rifles they are coming with is superior to what our Nigerian army has. This is not your regular pastoralists. This is not them. This is a full-fledged terrorist organization. And when you hear the vice president telling people to live in peace, to embrace peace, no, you are embracing deaths. So what you're telling them is to sit in one of the people I interviewed, I can still see their faces, really. I've been to these places, I've seen shallow graves, I've talked to kids, I've seen people who had different kinds of things. The pictures are all over my laptop here. I can show you this after the program. If you see what is really happening, one of the people I talked to, I said, why are you staying in this community? You know that they will come back. He said, life in the IDP camp is death. Life in the community is death. I don't know whether they are coming or not, but I can't stay either ways. So they are waiting to be killed. It's just that dying instrumentally. This is what is really going on. And you are telling them to embrace peace because the government is seeing this as farmer header class. So they would advise you to live peaceably. That's why we are telling the government, begin the process to officially gazette these people. Again, let me take you back to Boko Haram. Nobody goes to any community that is attacked by Boko Haram to tell them live peaceably with your neighbors because they've been officially gazetted. And Nigerian military knows what they are dealing with, terrorists. But now when you see them as, two fighting, it becomes an issue of trying to separate the two guys that are fighting. No, two guys are not fighting. One person has an agenda, ideological agenda, political agenda, religious agenda, and they are pursuing it. And then if you ask the communities, what do you hear when they come? They start chanting religious chants before they attack. And in many of the cases, you ask them yourselves, especially when they have time to attack, sometimes they cordon off the security issue, they cordon off the community and start slaughtering with knives. And why are they not killing with the weapons they have? Why are they slaughtering with knives? So there are a lot of issues that you see on display here that you would see that indeed the federal government is doing Plateau people, Benue people, and indeed all of those people. And I hear my elder brother talking about, these are not border communities. Plateau is not a border, Benue, Kaduna. So these they move up and down. So you talk.
We really don't have much time. But again, one other thing is that Bish, if he's saying that these are people who have come to attack these communities, that they are not farmers, they're not herders. If he's been able to glean this or investigate that, what's difficult for the NSA and his team to unearth? So why are we trying to paper over crack?
Absolutely nothing. They have more resources at their disposal to conduct even better research than he did.
Yes.
I have alluded to the fact that I don't believe that it's farmer-herders clashes, because if it is, we ought to have solved it, because the answer is not in the sky, it's here. We don't need to reinvent anything to solve the problem. I said it that it's much more deeper than that. Now, the reason why I am focused on the border, particularly border management, is that we don't have a lot of factories in Nigeria that produce weapons. These weapons are coming in from the Sahel, they're coming in from Libya. Those areas are in total chaos. So we need to take control of our borders. First and foremost, eliminate the source of the killing. They cannot kill 150 people with machete within that short period of time that they had killed with weapons. So we need to eliminate the source of the choice weapon, which is small arms and light weapons, because he alluded that they even carry,
high caliber, yes.
Yes, rocket propelled grenade. And so that's where border management is very important. Even the Honorable Minister of Interior said that if we can secure our border, we'll be able to solve the internal security problem we have by 70%. And I agree with him. If they don't have these weapons of choice, they will not be able to kill in mass. I'll give you one example. The Kaduna bound Abuja train that derailed. You know what they did? What they did was they went to the tracks, they removed the plates, the spikes, and the bolts that hold the plate in place. So they derailed the train. Once the train is derailed, they were laying ambush with small arms and light weapons. Then they opened fire. At the end of the day, 8 people were dead, and they took 60-something hostage. So where are they getting those weapons from? Those weapons are not being made here in Nigeria.
The weapons, the skills, the know-how.
The skills and know-how. But if you have the skills and you don't have the weapon, you're not going to be able to use it. So let us, first and foremost, eliminate the source of the weapons. Once we eliminate the source of the weapons, we can now deal with what we have within. But I don't believe it's farmer-herders clashes, because if it's farmer-herders clashes that we have been having for over a decade, and we have not been able to find solution to it, I don't know what kind of country we are, honestly speaking, because that is not it's not a rocket science problem for us not to have been able to solve it. So I believe it's a much more deeper problem than the farmer-herder clashes. He had been on the ground, and he is saying that once they kill, they displace people, some of that will come and reoccupy. So those people that are reoccupying those places, who are they? Why are we not interrogating them? You understand? So there seems to be a lot of factors playing out here that I've not been an inside. I don't know.
Certainly, this is something that we have to stay on, and we hope that we'll also have a conversation with the Interior Minister and, of course, some of the security chiefs to speak to some of the questions, because some of the questions posed by both of you are not rhetorical questions. They're questions that certainly deserve answers. I'd like to thank you for your time, both, for coming on the program tonight.